Welcome, all YouTubers and users of the internet. This is J.D.Fox from FoxVidz here, and today I am going to be doing something a little bit different than the usual content that you see on my channel here, which is, infrequent as it is. It's still something that different. And I'm going to be doing a little bit of a presentation here about personal branding, mainly just some my personal top 10 tips that I have for anyone who wants to make a personal brand or already has one and just wants to just keep it maintained, And of course, while keeping things ethical, which one of the whole tips is just that. And these are 10 tips that I specifically picked out just from both personal experience and also just essentially the best advice you can get off of this kind of stuff. I'm not trying to say I'm the best ever, but I'm going to try to do the best I can. Speaking as someone who actually owns a brand, that being my Joey D. Fox podcast, which you should totally check out. I'll probably leave it in the description of the video or something. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into it. Get your notepads ready. Now, tip number 10 here is to just brainstorm everything that you want your brand to be. For this stage, say you're just completely in the dark, but you really feel like you really want to make a brand for yourself for whatever it is that you're good at, or maybe you're inspired off of somebody else. You want to ask yourself those kind of questions, like, what do you want to make specifically? What's it based off of, if anything? Is it something original that you just sort of can't do, sort of just don't know everything on what you need to piece it together? Does it involve like a certain field you're in, or something that's outside the field you're in? And also, what are your long and short-term goals for it? More importantly, you also want to ask yourself, when developing personal brands and maintaining them, how do I want to be remembered? Because if you make a personal brand, it'll make a huge impact on your life. Trust me. And you want to just imagine yourself like 3 to 5 years or so from where you currently are at before you take part in the process of creating a personal brand, so that you can, you could just sort of determine for yourself if this is something that you really want to go through with, and are you willing to learn or find out how to learn what it takes to do so? And to do that, you have to think about your own personal skills at life, like in general, besides just sitting down, reviewing a movie or something, or just being your average social media person. Although that is kind of a part of getting a brand, but we'll get into that later. Your main skills should be anything that you put on your resume, that is, if you have one. And if you don't, I recommend you do that right this second. Pause this video, tally up all your life experiences, build yourself a resume, and build a strong resume too. And when you come back, then, we'll continue from there. Did you do it? Okay, cool. Let's keep moving. But for those of you who have made a resume already, you'll know that you just have a list of organizations on or off college campus, or ones that have anything to do with stuff that you love. And of course, this is another part of the brainstorming process for making a brand. And also, when you're really in the dark here, in the midst of brainstorming, don't be afraid to ask help for anywhere before you actually get into the nitty-gritty of it, because some people probably are trying to do it themselves also, but have a better idea or grasp on the starting points of it. And I recommend you just reach out to as many people as you can before you actually do it yourself. So, so you're not going in completely blind. Yeah, that's just part of brainstorming. Now, tip number 9, decide who your audience is and how you want them to see you or what you're doing. So yeah, your audience is going to be the people who are going to be receiving your brand, like duh. But the problem is the audience range it depends on how strong your brand is and how good your idea is or how you present it. Like, it could range from just 5 to 10 people to 5 to 10 million people if you're trying to aim big. And if you clicked on this video, I would imagine you are probably trying to aim big. So listen, you want to picture what audience you want to establish, because that's just a key part of just creating and maintaining your personal brand. It's just, I'm going to say that a lot because there are a lot of keys to maintaining and making a personal brand. But establishing your audience is one of them, after picturing them, of course. Now, you're going to have to accept one thing. You can't please everybody. A lot of people are going to be like, oh, no, I don't want to look at those many shoes. There's so much more important stuff in life, lol. And then a whole bunch of other stuff like that, like if you want to do a shoe brand or something, for example. You're going to always have, some negative Nancy's out there. There's nothing you can do about that. But you still should always consider, just looking toward making a brand where that happens as little as possible. And one way you could do that is just simply research today's interests for common people, And when you mesh that with stuff that you personally like, and if it has a good combination, then producing a brand, or at least making a blueprint of a brand, shouldn't be that hard to do when you're trying to make a solid brand for people to learn to love. Now, another thing that you can do in this process here is think about creating channels. Just at least think about it, which of course means like an extension essentially to your brand and also yourself, kind of like here, what I have with FoxVidz and the Joey D. Fox podcast. I might put them on here someday, for example. By them, I mean the episodes. But yeah, having channels with solid format, which is like organization of like how you design your brand and the channels themselves, and also the frequency in updating things about the brand, like either messages or producing things or collaborations, things like that. All that kind of stuff when you're with channels significantly boosts the chances of people being attracted towards your brand, thus, of course, strengthening it. Another thing you want to do probably is contact or collaborate with other owners of brands that are similar to your ideas that you just simply didn't hear about, or any people that are part of your target audience in your foreseeable or possibly actual current professional life, depending on where you are when you clicked on this video. Some of these people could be a boss or a supervisor or one that you are under employment of, possibly. And in that case, you want to build as strong of a bridge with them as you can. You can also trust in people like professors, mentors, or literally just anybody else you think or know you can confide in for personal or professional advice. You could just talk to your therapist if you wanted to, and they would just write down the little red notebook, phone numbers or something for people to get in contact with. If not, therapists themselves. You never know. Maybe they like that shoe brand that you want to get off the ground, or the idea of it. Tip number 8, I have: get used to networking. Seriously, it's everywhere in every single type of business or branding thing ever. You want to really get used to it quickly, because it is actually a key to growing some kind of circle of people or list of peers or mentors, like I said, but on a professional level when developing and handling whatever brand it is you want to do. Now, a few ways you can getting into networking. You want to remain in contact with any professors or employers that you currently have worked with or are working with. And since for those of you college students who are watching this, go to those career and internship fairs that occur on your college campus once a semester or so. Trust me, that is a great opportunity for you to just bond with people that could potentially be the reason why your brand even succeeds in the first place, is because how big of an influence some people who are heads or representatives of certain companies that coincide with the idea of your brand, ethical or otherwise, or like just what you want to do with it. It could just work, It doesn't take a genius to imagine that. Now, for those of you who are beyond college or employed at the same time as college, God help you. And that is also if your job even features this opportunity, you also want to try and attend happy hour lunches with any coworkers that you know, or possibly even that you don't know if you want to take the risky route. Because, you never know what opportunities could pop up during those kind of lunches. It's usually with people who are also representatives of other like brands that could be all similar to yours, and you might want some ideas. Then you can make up your own unique ones, because uniqueness is, of course, another vital point that we'll get into more here. But for now, that's basically the best ways you could get into networking. So I recommend you do that if you want to get real technical with your brand. Speaking of technical things, this is one of the biggest, most important tips I have for you right here. This is tip number 7 right here. Create an online presence for you and your brand. So remember when I talked about channels? This is where that comes to fruition, because channels are basically places or accounts, be it like I said, like here, my channel here on YouTube or Instagram, whatever it is, like some of your social media accounts that are either strictly professional but even otherwise could turn into a channel for your brand that people can always flock to for any updates on it or any like cool things to see that you put out. And like I said earlier, it'll attract even more people if you have a neat and focused format around your brand. Not just talking about just how logo works, although that is kind of a little small piece of the puzzle here that you might want to look into and research. But you also want to have solid scheduling and frequency with the amount of things that you put out when you start your brand. And you want to also include explanations or examples of what your brand is and what it offers to the world so that people know exactly what it is your brand has to offer. Because, that's sort of the big thing about personal branding is that what does it offer to the world? Why do I want this thing? Why do I want to buy this little deal right here? What's so special about this Fox brand? Something like that. And one way you could do this without even getting into too serious territory is to just tinker around with some of the safer social media sites. I personally recommend you use Facebook, Instagram, I guess sometimes YouTube, and also LinkedIn. LinkedIn, like 93% of any employers ever are going to be searching up profiles for you on LinkedIn. So I recommend you get yourself an account right there so you can connect with as many employers or people who have worked under employers that you're interested in to help promote your brand or create it. And it's also important that sometimes you might have some crossovers with alliancing brands, and that could just draw both the crowd of that one brand and then also increase the crowd of your brand and also vice versa, it'll be a mutually beneficial type of thing for both of your brands. And then people are going to be like, hey, like Nike's is working with this guy's shoe brand or something like that. And oh, wow, this guy's shoe brand is pretty cool. Man, they look like them and Nike go together like bread and butter, man. Like it could be something that ends up turning into something really notable. Now, while you're making your online presence however way you want to make your ambitions clear. You want to just state exactly who you are. Don't lie. That's just unethical as all hell. And then share all the values that you stand for, your areas of expertise, which should go along with whatever type of brand it is. And if it doesn't, you want to explain why. You want it in as few sentences as possible. Don't turn into a whole essay about your life or whatever. Just keep it real simple and basic. Just talk about the subjects of your brand, and showcase yourself along with it, and just try to demonstrate leadership also as you talk or write, so that way people can have some confidence that you're a competent brand owner. As you do that, you also want to be mindful of who exactly it is you're sending your brand out to. You want to some people couldn't just take advantage of anything or copy off of you or hack you or something. You want to really watch yourself, which is why I recommended the more safer of the bunch of social media sites that are out there and alive in the world right now. Because if your brand launches in a big way, it eventually becomes one with your reputation as a person. So if say you did some kind of scandal, right? Like you messed around with a girl a little too much, and then that girl was super popular and whatever, and then that just gets spread across the internet like wildfire, that's gonna hurt your brand. That's gonna hurt your brand a lot. So you want to really watch what you're doing at all times whenever you start your online presence for your personal brand. Whatever happens to it happens to you. It's like a voodoo curse. So yeah, just be aware of that. Don't be like the typical people that have been hurt terribly by stuff that they said or did. Even brands that last for several years can just get annihilated in an instant over just some stupid thing they said on Twitter or something. You want to watch that. Tip number 6 I have for you. This is kind of an optional one. You may want to make a plan for monetization. You don't really need to, actually. If you just want to get your brand off the ground, it's not really mandatory, especially if you're well-financed, you're debt-free already and everything like that. But if you're really looking at making a brand also for the money, not just for the fun, I would recommend you just look into any sort of advertising programs or such, because that's generally how everything generates revenue nowadays. There has to be ads behind everything. Like it or not, that's just how it is. Or if you don't want to annoy people to death with ads about Old Spice or whatever they keep constantly shoving down your throat now, try a subscription or donation type of service like a Patreon or something like that. Because when you make tiers or subscription levels or whatever, and people could like get into like real special benefits and incentives for whatever your brand has to offer, and it'll make people more like dedicated to whatever cause it is that you're going behind when you have your brand. Which, speaking of causes, we'll get into that later. That's a part of the ethical side of things here. But even so, it's just something that you can do. People gotta make a living sometimes, and well, sometimes this is one way to do it. That is, of course, if it's successful if it has a good launch in the first place. Like, keep all the other tips I said already in mind, and also the ones that we're going to say soon if you want to actually have a good chance for monetization to be successful. Next is that you should remain consistent with your brand once it's off the ground. Consistency really is key no matter when or where you are in the world, especially in here. Now, in my opinion, I think this could go without saying, but it also should come right after you create an online presence. To exercise consistency, you really want to try to do periodic personal audits of yourself, or look at your own social media profiles from incognito mode or a general perspective, where you're just a regular viewer, and make sure you're happy with whatever kind of image it is that you're presenting. Make sure it looks good. It looks good for you. It looks good for the cause that you're fighting for here with this brand, and that people that you're targeting or not targeting also can at least kind of like it. Now, another way you could practice consistency, of course, is just continuously checking on any other channels that you've set up, similar to the personal audit thing, so that you can have some kind of like statistics or measurement of how your brand is doing. Like, do people like it? How many likes are the posts getting? What are people commenting about the brand across the web? Things like that. And you want to be sure everything stays healthy and constantly improving as you do more and more with your brand and you post more and more about things that it does. Now, if any of the channels are lacking in consistency that is beyond course correction, it's probably best if you just outright private it or delete it and restart altogether, or just not restart at all. Because sometimes harm can be done to your brand super quickly, as I mentioned before, not just over like scandals or whatever, but just in lacking consistency, or like doing something that is the opposite of what your brand is known for. If you all of a sudden like go into some kind of agenda or something that people didn't sign up for, that goes against the ethics that you made your brand on in the first place, people are going to leave it, and you don't want that. So don't bother going to any agendas, and do bother keeping up proper consistency. And if there's a channel that doesn't do that, then you could just simply private it completely just to you, your friends, or family, so that not too much harm is done to your brand. Worst case scenario. So, like I said, it goes for ethics involved with your branding as well. And speaking of ethics, here we are. This is probably the biggest thing about personal branding right here, is the ethics that you have to create behind it. You can't just have, you can sometimes, but rarely is there ever going to be a strong brand without ethics or some sort of specific mission tied behind it that is morally right and understandable for all to see. It should be literally the core, like a part or the actual core of any developing or existing personal brand out there, especially if it's going to be effective. And to be effective, it has to also be at least kind of unique. For example, you want to choose a favor to accomplish for people that most brands don't often tackle, like helping people gain access to clean water while you're also getting profit in or getting like likability in whatever like your shoe thing is. Like, say you have the monetization thing with your shoe brand, you could just the causes could be just dedicated to getting people clean water to drink, something like that. That's hypothetical. You could also dedicate your ethical cause to just any other like problems that are seldom talked about with your typical brands, or any crises that are near you that are, I guess, either well-known or aren't well-known. Preferably aren't well-known, because that, again, makes you more unique. And when you're unique, you get more attractability, if that makes any sense. And of course, and when you do have that, makes a follow-up to your brand's purpose overall, obviously. And like I said, nets you more attention. And sometimes, again, ethical goals are the primary, can sometimes be just straight up the primary purpose of whatever kind of brand that you have in mind, which, is also cool. Like if you want to just do that, then you could just take this one single step right there and just get in probably a couple of the others and then just get started, get started on brainstorming and everything like that. Get started on your online presence and everything like that. Even if you have like some sort of slogan or motto that you have like cooking up inside your head, one thing you could do with that is that you could make that just tied to whatever ethical cause it is that you're trying to build and whatever the brand accomplishes, or if it's like two different things in one thing, like you have your ethical goal as the thing that's the follow-up to what the main brand is about. Like, you could just make that kind of concept into your slogan or motto that people can know you for and that people could probably meme about across the internet. You never know. That could go either way, but still, it's worth mentioning. Now, of course, there are always advantages and difficulties to have when you're trying to maintain ethical rights and everything like that to your brand. Or if you're trying to make the ethical goal that you have in mind itself your brand. Some advantages include just straight up just support from people for your cause in whatever communities that the goal is reaching out to, or people that vibe with it. Another advantage could be any like niche appeal from people who are like, ooh, that's really something. You don't see that ever. That's really cool. I want to be a part of that. Like, that's niche appeal. The approval from people who dedicate their lives to a specific mission that just so happens to vibe with what you're doing with your brand. And of course, one other advantage is recruiting benefits in case your brand turns into a straight up business. Like, you could imagine you could be either working for or be the boss of something that your brand has made into a company or something like that. Like, it could go really far. And of course, when you have that, there's recruiting benefits that come for those who want to work with or for your brand, because the employer or employees that they want to live by similar to the ethics that you made for your brand. The difficulties, on the other hand, one is an obvious one, is just up and choosing the most unique angle out of the whole school of fish of angles that your brand's ethics can go by. It's a similar thing to having difficulty coming up with brainstorming ideas for your brand. But trust me when I say, whatever you do, try to think of something unique and something that you love. Both those things are great combinations for coming up with the best of brands, no matter how basic the process seems to be. And when you do that, you want to truly hammer the ethics of your brand home by integrating your own loyalty to your own cause into your identity or the brand name and logo or any other marketing tools that you have at your disposal. And if you don't have those at your disposal, get them. And also, like I said before about avoiding agendas, just avoid any kind of pandering altogether or shoehorning your unethical cause into your brand just because. It should be something that you mean with your heart, something that really means something to you and to other people. To do otherwise is a mistake that you see too often today. Tip number 3, avoid turning your brand into a sales pitch. So yeah, regardless if you want to make a profit off your brand or just have fun with it, it shouldn't just be about selling it. It should be like how, people in business fields properly do business with people that they have good, trustworthy chemistry with, not just the company. Like, sure, that can also be done. That's quite common. But that's not really how, proper, business should be done. And so for that reason, whatever kind of pitch or whatever you put out that explains all your ideas about your personal brand, it should always be a genuine display of who you are as a person, whether it's in person or go across the internet digitally when you're communicating with people. And of course, when you are doing such communication, you want people to feel like you're a bona fide professional with honest interests, intentions, hobbies, etc., that make a clear connection to what exactly your brand is, that you're here for it, you live for it, and also why, and the assurance that it'll always make a positive impact in people's lives as long as the brand lives. You don't want to be like some kind of Fred Meyer Superstore used car salesman or something like that with this. This should be taken at least somewhat seriously. Now, tip number 2, do not leave personal branding out of your career plans. This I say because, like it says here on the top here, to make a personal brand is an essential piece of a career path. Like I mentioned something similar at the very beginning, I believe. If you're really set on a career path that doesn't seem like in need of personal brand, well, I think it doesn't really hurt to at least prepare one to launch in case needs must. And of course, you want to do this only if you absolutely feel like you should, because sometimes you might not need it at all. But if you do have even the slightest inkling that a personal brand for yourself would be pretty cool to have, work on it, keep it, make it a pet project if you have to, but just keep it in your pocket. Because here's the thing, the strongest personal brands lead to stronger, bigger jobs in similar or better fields compared to what you're looking at when you're going through college, let's say. Like if you have a personal brand on hand, you could be looking at more interviews, promotions, partnerships, or speaking engagements with anybody when you least expect it too. And that's because of you having at least a draft or a demo or something of a personal brand for yourself that could really, really work. And say the time comes where you offer it up as an opportunity in the place that you're working at, or you just up and do it yourself. These things happen. And even if say it doesn't happen, even if you leave your current career plan that you're doing, you may revisit it, or in the meantime, before that, you could just work on your brand. And in any case, it's still wise to always prepare even more ideas, refinements, or new positive ways to upgrade your personal brand as time goes on, whether or not you've already launched it or not, and whatever form it takes as time goes on when you have it. Leaving the chance of personal branding out of a career path just up and denies the chance of all kinds of opportunities, more employers, or maybe even more clients if you're the employer. They're all going to come to your personal brand. They're all going to come together. If you take the long road that's more worthwhile, and of course following the correct do's and don'ts to your own personal brand. And if you want to know what those are, look no further than the past half hour I've spent talking, or just other people that do stuff similarly, which I'll get into in a second. The people of the future will know who they're working with and understand what you have to offer once and for all if you go through with these types of strategies, and just keep all this in mind. Like, even if you don't actually end up like following this advice here that I have here, just keep it in mind, because people of the future are probably going to be doing this like it's breathing. Let's be real. Finally, number 1 tip is probably the most simplest one, I'll be honest. When all else fails, just use the web. Just Google it, honestly. Just Google any help or whatever you need. Because there's a massive number of other experts in personal branding who create websites, videos, and much more stuff all across the internet, not just YouTube, like where you're watching this, hopefully. And they can all just get you on the right track in no time at all. That is, of course, should anything that we mentioned so far not work, or if you don't really want to bother with that much effort, which is not a good attitude to have during this, by the way. But anyway, Google, Bing, Microsoft Edge, or whatever it is that you even use in your personal device or household or whatever, are some of the best search engines for any research stuff, digging into what part of the internet is just the right one for you on your quest to building your own personal brand and holding it. And of course, make it functional and ethical. However, of course, this goes without saying, just don't trust everything you hear or read or whatever. Like, for example, don't just default to Reddit or something like that. Just use regular browsing. Just use regular browsing and video watching from professionals only. And you can do this first thing, upon just thinking about making a brand. You could just immediately just Google everything, Or you could do it as a last resort if you actually have confidence and the skills and everything to actually sort of whip up something that from just your brain without having to use the internet, which kind of goes in line with everything else I've been saying a little bit. Now, before we go, these are a few extra personal extra tips from me to you about personal branding and such like that. And this just comes from experience for me here. If you're in college, or if you have a ways to go through college, or have yet to be in it, sign up for media or communication minors, or maybe even majors if you really want to really get a firm grip on these kinds of subjects with ethics and personal branding and networking and everything else like that. Also, you remember how I just sort of mentioned how professionals create websites and such? You should try to do that. Seriously, like go on to Wix, a website called Wix. It helps you create websites of any kind. It could be your best friend for beginning or actually making your mark. So yeah, you should probably give that a few tries. And there's even a logo maker on it. And also, you want to try to master, at least on a basic or intermediate level, you want to try to understand a good amount of some of these programs here that are owned by Adobe or Microsoft, because if you have even just a basic amount of experience in, say, something like Photoshop, that can get you a pretty good distance when it comes to branding. Now, I'm not just like talking about new logo art or nothing. Like, it could straight up just help you make products or systems, anything like that. And above all else, always, always, always ask yourself if if whatever you're doing is really something that you need or want to achieve, whatever goals you have in life. You always want to be sure of yourself, because if you are, then I guarantee you that your brand will be that much better and that much more successful. And there you go. That is it. Those are my top 10.5, I guess, given my extra tips on personal branding and also some ethics that really drive it through. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe on the video. If you want to see more stuff like this in the future, please do let me know. Or if this ain't cool, then I'll just up and stop. But I digress, and also wish you all the best. God bless. Bars.